Shore Rivers and the legacy organization that predates Shore Rivers, which is Chester River Association, has a long history working and advocating for the health of the Corsica River, which is one of our major tributaries to the Chester. It flows into the middle Chester River, kind of in the same point where Gray's Inn Creek and Langford Creek flow in from Kent County. So there's a big intersection of water quality and kind of land areas and subwatersheds converging in the middle Chester there, where all of those major tributaries meet. The Corsica River itself is a fairly shallow river system, which can unfortunately present it with some issues in terms of flushing, how quickly tides flow in and out, and things like that. Unfortunately, the Corsica River is one of our poorest performing sites in terms of the water quality monitoring that we perform. So I go out on my Riverkeeper boat. I test the Corsica at several sites from April through October, twice a month, and I monitor for several water quality parameters. Dissolved oxygen, turbidity or clarity, the presence of chlorophyll A, which would be any kind of floating plant matter, small single cell plant matter. We monitor temperature, dissolved oxygen levels, and then we also monitor nitrogen and phosphorus levels. And so we use a series of formulas every year to look at that yearly comprehensive data and generate a report card of the health of the Chester River and then all of its tributaries. And so the Corsica River last year received a D+, and it was actually our poorest performing tributary. The parameters where it tests routinely the poorest would be phosphorus levels, clarity, and chlorophyll A. And it's not a surprise that those are the three that test the poorest, because the link between clarity and phosphorus, you can find lots of trends between those two parameters, because phosphorus has to bond to sediment for it to move into our waterways. And so suspended sediment in your waterway is usually what's impacting clarity, or sometimes suspended sediment and an intense presence of single cell plants growing as a reaction to sediment that is nutrient rich that is suspended in the waterway. So all of those things can kind of combine to impact clarity. And anyone who recreates on the Corsica can attest that you're usually not getting more than a foot or two of clarity in the best of cases along the Corsica. And so, you know, the phosphorus trends that we see in the Corsica is not a surprise when we look back at Maryland Department of the Environment's data. So Maryland Department of the Environment has done a series of tests in all of the subwatersheds of the Corsica, of which there are 45, and 21 out of those 45, so 46% of those subwatersheds test high in phosphorus levels that exceed healthy parameters by 30 to 50%. And so that can come from various land use factors. That can be a result of agriculture, that can be a result of spray effluent, it could be a result of any kind of, it could be septic systems. There's a lot of different ways that phosphorus bonded with sediments and solids enter our waterway. And so that's of a high concern for the Corsica, I'd say, as it looks toward improving its health and improving its clarity so that we can see grasses growing in the Corsica, which will improve dissolved oxygen, provide habitat for juvenile aquatic species, that sort of thing. You know, every week that I'm out on the Corsica monitoring, I am passing both recreational and professional crabbers. I am seeing many, you know, kids and adults of all ages learning to sail, recreating on small boats through the Corsica River Yacht Club. You know, we have, of course, so many waterfront homes on the Corsica, all of which, you know, many of which have boats that they're using. You know, I pass fishermen, I pass kayakers, canoers, paddleboarders. You know, Centreville Wharf has an active public dock where there are boats tied up. So it's a highly used and beloved river, and I can see why, because when you travel up the Corsica, you know, its beauty is very real, and it's a very special place to be. So, you know, Shore Rivers has always tried to use our science data to inform our advocacy efforts. So part of what can help the Corsica River, just like the Chester or any of the other tributaries that Shore Rivers protects, we work in Annapolis every winter to advocate for better laws that can improve water quality and implement correct land use policies on the Eastern Shore. That's a big step in towards improving water quality in the Corsica. But it also informs our restoration projects. So Shore Rivers has engaged in several restoration projects over the years in the Corsica watershed. Many of our notable restoration projects are in partnership with the Natural Lands Project, which is a program that runs out of the Center for Environment and Society at Washington College. And so Dan Smalls, who runs that program, works to implement native grasses back into farmland so that we can replace critical lost habitat that upland birds like the bobwhite quail need to be able to come back to this area, as well as migratory songbirds, native pollinators. But there are some incredible co-benefits for water quality in that. So we have partnered many times to help install these grass buffers. Sometimes Shore Rivers even implements a wetland, and that would be on perhaps marginal performing farmland where maybe historically there was a wetland there or a stream head that has eroded in. And so by adding those habitats back in, we're able to slow down runoff from ag land. We're able to allow native plants to filter and treat that water for nitrogen and phosphorus, and then just slow down the abundance of water that might be running off farms into our waterways. So those restoration projects have been successful, and there's a lot of opportunity for more. You know, Kent and Queen Anne's County are some of the most agricultural counties. And so there's, of course, by extent, a lot of agricultural land in the Corsica River watershed. It's not the only opportunity we have to make a difference, though. Impervious surface is a growing concern for the Corsica watershed. Queen Anne's County is increasingly running up against losing the limits of their sewer system allocations, and that is because Queen Anne's County is the first county in the state to max out their TMDL limits, and that means total maximum daily load. It is the limit of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that the county is allowed to discharge into the Chesapeake and the Chester River, and that is part of a nutrient-reducing pollution diet that has been established by the Chesapeake Bay program and the Chesapeake Bay Agreement, of which we've been a part of for almost 30 years. And so as a result of that, allocations, growth that would use such allocations may start being directed toward town centers instead of unincorporated counties. So as the county seat, as the largest town in Queen Anne's County, Centreville could experience a significant growth in development pressure as a result of this. And additionally, as we keep having these conversations about the possible third span for the Chesapeake Bay Bridge crossing, we are also going to see housing increase demands, continual pressure added to the county in general, and a lot of that's going to fall within the Corsica watershed. So we need to think about and prioritize thoughtful planning as this growth comes into our county. And there's also a huge amount of funding, kind of once in a generational funding right now from both the state and federal level for planting urban trees. And so adding established native tree canopy to the town of Centreville, to developments and HOAs and neighborhoods across the Corsica also has a tremendous benefit to water quality. When urban trees shade impervious surface, that means that the water isn't becoming superheated by that impervious surface, which is a positive thing. We don't want to be unnecessarily raising the temperature of our waterways from rain runoff. It also is going to, of course, hold sediments and reduce that kind of runoff of loose sediments and therefore phosphorus and nitrogen or any other nutrients that might be there. So we have been monitoring for bacteria across our waterways for a long time at Shore Rivers. Over the past 3 years, we've had new protocols where volunteers across our watershed collect water samples from public access and recreation points. We monitor those samples for fecal and enterococci bacteria, and we post those results weekly as we process those water samples so that folks can have real-time information about the bacterial levels in their water in time for the weekend when they want to recreate. We have 2 sites that we monitor on the Corsica, one off of Centreville Wharf and one at the Corsica River Yacht Club. And historically, Centreville Wharf has been one of our poorest performing sites. It was always, it failed more than 80% of the time. When it failed, it had really high bacteria readings. But over the last 3 years, it has improved by over 30%, and it has it's nowhere near one of our poorest performing sites. It's had a huge comeback. And then the Corsica Yacht Club has been our top performing site for as long as I've been here. And it had an increase of 35% this year. It is hands down our top performing site. So bacteria levels are trending for the better in the Corsica. And while I can't point to exactly what that might be, I'm really excited to see it, and I hope that trend continues. I'll have to let you know at the end of the summer here.